6 children skipped school, took a boat, and set sail. They soon discovered they were lost on a deserted island. How did this happen? What happened next? Did they manage to survive? Continue the story to the end to find out the answers. Welcome everybody to our channel. In 1965, in a country called the Kingdom of Tonga, which is an archipelago in the Pacific Ocean, there was a Catholic boarding school on one of the islands. The school was run by a group of nuns, and the students were subject to very strict rules. They were only allowed to leave the school once a week under the supervision of the nuns. They also had a set bedtime and other strict rules. If anyone broke the rules, they would be punished immediately. In this school, there were 6 boys between the ages of 16 and 14. They were Stephen, Manu, Sione, Luke, David, and Kolo. These boys always felt restricted because of those rules. They would often talk about freedom and their desire to do whatever they wanted without restrictions. One day, while they were sitting together at lunch and talking as usual, the oldest boy, Sione, suggested that they run away from the island. One of them asked, "Where will we run to?" He answered that they would run to Fiji, which is an island in the same region of the Pacific Ocean and is more developed than their island. They were excited and liked the idea and agreed to it. However, there was one problem. Fiji was very far from their island, more than 750 kilometers away. In order to get there, they would need a ship. The boys began to plan how to escape. As for the problem of the ship, they agreed to steal a boat owned by an old man with whom they had a feud. They also agreed that the journey would begin at night, so that no one would discover their plan. Later that night, after everyone in the school was asleep, the boys began their escape. They snuck out of their rooms quietly, climbed over the school wall, and went to the beach. There, they found the old man's boat, boarded it, lowered the sail, and raised the anchor. They set sail into the ocean. They brought with them some food, water, and a portable gas stove to cook the fish they would catch from the sea. However, they did not bring a compass or map to guide them on their journey. After 2 hours of sailing, they had reached a great distance out at sea. The sun was about to rise, and they were feeling very tired. They were not used to staying up late, as their school forbade it. They began to fall asleep one by one, until they were all asleep. The boat continued to sail on its own, into the unknown. While they were sleeping, a strong storm suddenly hit. Rain began to pour down, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. The 6 boys woke up in a panic. They quickly tried to raise the sail, but it was torn apart by the force of the storm. The boat was tossed about in the strong waves, and the boys struggled to hold on for dear life. After a while, the storm subsided. However, they had lost the sail, and they could no longer steer the boat. The waves were now in control. They drifted for 8 days. During this time, their food and water had run out completely. They tried to catch fish, but they were unsuccessful. They began to collect raindrops and coconuts, which they had brought with them. To share the water they collected, they made a schedule for drinking, so that each person had a designated time and had to drink as little as possible, because if they ran out of water, they would surely die. The anchor had also broken off and was lost in the ocean. On the 9th day, they spotted an island in the distance. They rowed towards it with their hands, as they no longer had a sail. When they reached a safe distance from the island, they jumped into the water and swam to shore. They left the boat behind. After reaching the island, they lay down on the beach and slept soundly. They woke up the next morning to begin their new adventure. After waking up, they began to look for food and water. They took some branches from trees and sharpened them into spears. They used these spears to catch fish. Since they did not have fire and did not know how to start it, they had to eat the fish raw. As for water, they could not find any that was safe to drink. They caught seagulls, took their eggs, and drank their blood and eggs. They continued in this way, eating anything they could find and drinking anything they could find, in order to survive. No matter how bad or disgusting the food or drink was, they saw it as something beautiful, as they were on that island. They then began to explore the island. In one area, they found a collection of ancient pottery, primitive knives, and chickens. However, there were no other humans. They then tried to start a fire, but they were unsuccessful. They tried again, but they were still unsuccessful. They kept trying and trying for several times until they were finally able to light it. Since this fire was very important, they needed to keep it going. They created a schedule for maintaining the fire, so that each person had a designated time to add wood to it, so that it would not go out. At night, they would sit around the fire and sing songs they had learned in school. In order to adapt to the island, the boys began to try to use anything they could find. They built a hut from palm leaves. They were also able to build a bean and banana farm. and also they made a gym and a badminton court. One of them made a guitar from wood and coconut shells, as well as many other useful things. Although they were compatible and cooperative, they would sometimes argue. They created a rule for this, which stated that if two of them quarreled, each of the two quarrelers would go to one end of the island and the other would go to the other end and stay there. Despite everything they did on the island, the psychological situation was very difficult. With each passing day, they lost more hope that they would return to their families. Despite this, they tried one day to get off the island. They built a raft from the trees on the island, but it couldn't hold the weight and sank immediately. They failed to escape from the island. They returned to their lives and work on the island. Each of them had a task. Some of them took care of the chickens they had found, some took care of the fire, some tended to the farm, and some watched the sea, hoping that a ship would pass by and rescue them. They continued in this way for 15 months. One day, Stephen was standing on a hill overlooking the sea. As he was watching, he saw a boat pass by the island for the first time. He quickly ran down the hill and ran to the beach, shouting and waving to the boat. The boat owner saw him and thought he was from a local tribe. Stephen jumped into the water and swam to the boat. When he boarded, he found the boat owner pointing a gun at him. He raised his hands and said that his name was Stephen and that he was with 5 other boys who had been stranded on the island for 15 months. The boat owner lowered the gun and introduced himself. His name was Peter Warner, and he was an Australian fisherman. He had seen smoke coming from the island in the distance with his binoculars. He was surprised, because he knew that the island had been deserted for a long time. But he understood when he met Stephen. The other 5 boys then swam to the boat and boarded with Stephen and Captain Peter Warner. Peter wrote their names on a piece of paper and contacted the Coast Guard and told them what happened. So they told him that they had been searching for these boys for a long time, but they had not found them. They thought they were dead, and their families had held funerals for them. This moment was very moving and shocking for Peter, but the boys were very happy to be rescued and finally returning to their families, whom they had not seen in over 15 months. After the boys arrived at the nearest port, they were immediately arrested. This was because the old man had reported them to the police after they stole his boat. When they arrived, he asked the police to arrest them. Peter decided to help the boys. He had strong connections to the media, so he contacted an Australian television channel and proposed that they shoot a documentary about the story of these boys. The channel agreed, and they sent a crew of cameramen. They gave Peter a sum of money as a down payment. Peter used this money to pay the old man for his boat. The old man then dropped the charges against the boys, and they were released. Peter then took the boys in his boat back to the island where their families lived. When they arrived, they were reunited with their families. The reunion was a very moving moment. The families threw a celebration to welcome the boys home. After a few days, the boys, who were now rested, went with the camera crew back to the island where they had been stranded. They were filmed there to document their experience. After that, the boys worked as fishermen with Peter for a while. They did not return to the school from which they had run away. Eventually, they all went their separate ways, except for Manu, who remained working with Peter. They became best friends. Now, this is the end of the story. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. Write for us your opinions in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with your friends.